Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely heartwarming and, honestly, super powerful story. It's called How I Taught My Grandmother to Read by the renowned author Sudha Murty, and we're looking at it exactly as it appears in the Class 9 English Kaveri textbook. Now, this isn't just your standard story about learning the alphabet. It's actually a profound look at reversing roles, smashing through societal barriers, and the absolute unstoppable power of determination. So, let's jump right in.
Okay, let's start with a little thought experiment. Imagine being a 12-year-old kid, and suddenly you are tasked with teaching your own grandmother how to read. I mean, where do you even begin? How do you handle that massive dynamic shift of suddenly being the authority figure to someone you've looked up to literally your entire life? It's a pretty fascinating challenge, right? And it's exactly the unique situation our young narrator finds herself in.
Section 1, The Weekly Magazine Ritual and Village Life.
To really get how this whole thing unfolds, we've got to set the scene. Picture this. Decades ago, in a small village in North Karnataka, the transport system wasn't exactly what it is today. You didn't have instant updates buzzing on your phone. The morning paper showed up in the afternoon, and the highly anticipated weekly magazine, well, that always arrived one day late. This made it a huge, almost sacred weekly event. Our 12-year-old narrator would sit right alongside her grandmother, Krishtaka. Every single Wednesday, when that magazine finally showed up, her grandmother would drop whatever she was doing in the kitchen. She'd sit down, completely rapt with attention, just to hear her granddaughter read the latest serialized episode of a wildly popular Kannada novel out loud. It was this incredibly special bond, built entirely around storytelling and shared imagination. Now, the story they were so obsessed with was a novel called Kashi Yatre by the famous Kannada writer Triveni, which was being published serially in the Karmovira magazine. And it had a really compelling dual plot. On one hand, you've got this old lady whose ultimate burning desire in life is to travel to Kashi, or Varanasi, to worship. For many Hindus, that's considered the ultimate punya, or holy merit. But intersecting with her life as a young orphan girl who desperately needs money for her wedding. Now, the grandmother, Krishtaka, had never been to Kashi herself, so she identified deeply with the old lady's spiritual yearning. But here's the twist. The old lady ultimately sacrifices all her life savings to fund the orphan's wedding, deciding that a living human's happiness is actually way more important than her pilgrimage.
Section 2, A Grandmother in Tears. So the grandmother has memorized every single detail of this story. She's completely emotionally invested. But then the 12-year-old narrator actually has to go away to a neighboring village for a few days for a wedding. This leaves her grandmother all alone right as the newest edition of the magazine arrives on the bus. And this brings us to a really crucial textbook reflection question. When the narrator finally gets back home, she finds her grandmother, a woman she affectionately calls Ava, in tears. This was a massive shock. Ava was a strong-willed 62-year-old woman who never cried. I mean, not even in the absolute toughest situations. So what in the world could possibly reduce this pillar of strength to tears? Well, later that night on a moonlit terrace, the mystery is solved. Ava comes over, affectionately touches her granddaughter's forehead, and makes this incredibly emotional confession. She says, "Many times I rubbed my hands over the pages, wishing they could understand what was written." She explained how she had opened the magazine, saw the picture for Kashi Yatre, but couldn't decipher a single word. She felt this profound, crushing sense of helplessness and deep regret that she'd never been to school. Her whole illusion of independence was completely shattered, all because she had to rely entirely on a child just to access the stories she loved so much. Section 3, A Vow to Learn. But hitting that emotional rock bottom wasn't the end of the story for Ava. It was actually a massive catalyst. Right there, in that vulnerable moment on the terrace, this 62-year-old grandmother makes a life-altering vow. She decides she is going to take control of her independence by learning the Kannada alphabet completely from scratch. The narrator, though, being a typical 12-year-old, totally misses the gravity of the situation at first. She literally laughs at her grandmother. She starts rattling off all these physical and societal reasons why learning is supposedly impossible. She's pointing out Ava's age, her gray hair, her wrinkled hands, her spectacles, and the fact that she's always busy working in the kitchen. She falls right into that classic trap of cultural stereotypes about age and education. But Ava shuts that day immediately, and her response is iconic. She says, "For good cause, if you are determined, you can overcome any obstacle. For learning, there is no age bar." She completely rejects the idea that her brain or her spirit has some kind of expiration date. It's a defining truth. True determination effortlessly ignores societal expectations. Section 4, Reversing the Roles. With that rock-solid conviction, the roles totally flip. Ava sets a hard deadline for herself, Saraswati Puja Day during the Dasara festival.
By that specific day, she declares she must be able to read a novel entirely on her own. And just like that, the 12-year-old officially becomes the teacher. From the night of that tearful confession, they dive into an intense period of daily tuition. Ava was not just casually learning, she was fiercely dedicated. Day in and day out, she was relentlessly reading, repeating, writing, and reciting everything her granddaughter taught her.
It is such a beautiful dynamic, isn't it? The youngest teacher and her very first student. The narrator notes that the sheer amount of homework her grandmother did was just amazing. And here's a fantastic little fact from the source text. This exact experience laid the foundation for the narrator's entire future. That 12-year-old girl would actually grow up to become a computer science teacher, instructing hundreds of students. And the whole thing started right there, on a wooden bench, teaching the Kannada alphabet to her grandmother.
Section 5, Independence and Respect. So months fly by in a blur of studying, and finally, the big deadline arrives. It's Dasara, the time of Saraswati Puja, which is fittingly the festival dedicated to the goddess of learning. The young teacher secretly buys a published copy of the novel Kashi Yatri to give her student as a gift. But what happens next is the true emotional climax of the story. In a stunning, deeply cultural gesture, Ava bends down and touches her young granddaughter's feet, performing a formal namaskara. The narrator is totally shocked. Elders never touch the feet of youngsters. But Ava explains it brilliantly. She says she isn't touching her granddaughter's feet, she's honoring her teacher. She's fulfilling her scriptural duty, which states that a teacher must be respected irrespective of their gender or age. It was the ultimate celebration of her newfound independence. Then, it's time for the final test. Deeply moved, the young narrator returns the namaskara by touching her grandmother's feet, and she hands over the wrapped gift. Ava unwraps it, and right there, completely independently, she reads the title aloud, Kashi Yatre by Triveni. She even reads the publisher's name. In that triumphant moment, the narrator realizes her very first student had passed with flying colors. What an absolutely incredible journey from the pages of the Kaveri textbook. As we wrap up this explainer, I'd love for you to reflect on Ava's path, from a place of helpless tears to totally empowered literacy. Ask yourself, how does the ability to learn continue to shape your own personal freedom? If a 62-year-old grandmother can conquer the alphabet to win back her independence, what barrier is stopping you from learning something new today? Keep exploring, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.